Good evening, or whenever you're watching this. This is, once again, C's Listening Room. And today, I have Fly Me Courageous, the 1990 release from Drivin and Cryin. First off, I don't like this band's name. This is classified as a southern rock band. Now, they're from Georgia, and I feel like it's so easy to classify any band from Georgia that's not alternative rock or college rock, as it was called, as southern rock. But it's pretty much a southern flavored rock band. And the name Drivin and Cryin, it actually sounds more like an album title of a third-rate glam rock album from like the late 80s. I could just see guys in neon green or yellow spandex and all that stuff. And even if you open up the insert here and look at a picture of the band, some of these guys look kind of glam rockier. They look like a heavy metal band. They got the long hair. This guy almost looks like Dave Mustaine of Megadeth, I think. But they look like a glam rock band even. And they're not. So I thought the name of the band sounded a little misleading. It didn't really sound like what I would call a southern rock band. But they were formed in the mid-'80s. I guess that was probably considered like a hip or edgy band name back then. So I don't think it's aged well, is what I'm trying to say. But I also don't really like the artwork on this album. For starters, on the back of the album, the very back cover, you've got this desert highway that floats up to the sky, and there's a steering wheel and a dashboard of what appears to be an unmanned vintage car. It doesn't look like anyone's actually driving it. It's just kind of sitting idling on the highway. Though the front cover's a mess. I'm trying to comprehend what's going on here. There's got to be an easy, simple explanation for it, but I can't figure out what it is. You've got that same steering wheel now removed from the dashboard. It's just randomly placed in the center of the picture. I guess maybe that's the drive-in part of the Drivin and Cryin name. And you've got another 2-lane highway out in the desert. And then what? I guess that's a space satellite. Is that a space satellite? And then there's this lady in like a ballroom gown that's holding onto the space satellite. This is pre-Photoshop cut and paste. They just took a bunch of images, glued them onto each other, and none of it really makes any sense. But inside the fold-out here, there are different variations of that same theme. Here's almost the same picture, but now there's the side view mirror of a car. So you're looking at the cover image from the driver's seat of the car and the mirror. And then here's another one that's similar, only the space contraption is now multiplied and they're in a tunnel instead of on the highway. So there's a lot going on there, and I don't think it really, once again, resembles the actual music. I think it looks more like an alternative rock album or college rock. This is 1990, so I think they were still using that term back then. So I don't think the visuals of this album really give you an idea of what this music is like. And I think if there are still any used record stores left, if somebody were to walk into one and never have heard this band before, they would see this and think that it was like an indie rock band. So the name's misleading, and I think the artwork is misleading. I bought this because of the title track. Fly Me Courageous was a big radio hit in the early 90s. The rock stations played it. It's actually a pretty straight-ahead heavy metal song. It's kind of hard rock heavy metal. It's the least southern song on the album, and it's easily the band's best-known song. It's their most famous song. It's what brought people into the stores to buy this album in the first place. It's a great song. It is a really great song. It still rocks. It's a kickin' tune. It is just absolutely, in my opinion, a classic song. One problem is it sounds a little bit different than everything else on the album. As I said, I keep going back to this, but this is supposed to be a southern rock band. So a lot of people heard this song on the radio, myself included, and thought this was a metal band, went out and bought the album, and were probably a little surprised or even disappointed at what was on it. It wasn't what we expected it to be. I thought this was going to be like a real high-octane heavy metal group, heavy metal album. And it's a little bit different than that. So they have every right in the world to do a heavy metal song if that's what they want. I mean, they write the songs, they perform the songs, it's their band, it's their songs. They can do that if they want. No complaint there. But that's the song that was so heavily promoted. And that's the song everybody knew, and it was not quite in line with the rest of the album. So I think a lot of people were really disappointed with this record. I was when I first bought it. I had a certain idea of what it was going to be, and it wasn't quite what it was. I went back and re-listened to it the other day, and these songs are actually pretty good once you understand what this band is about. They really aren't bad songs. Most of them are actually pretty decent. Except the title track is so good that it kind of knocks them down a notch. I feel like the title track is so good that the other songs really have to work harder to compete with it and to compare with it. And they didn't quite do that. There's nothing on here beyond the very memorable title cut that's particularly memorable 5 minutes after you listen to it. So the musicianship is good. The songs generally are good. I enjoyed listening to them most recently, but I just don't remember most of the songs after I listen to them because there's a certain ingredient that seems to be missing from it. And I hate to say that because they're not bad songs on their own. The other problem is they're up against a song that carries the entire album that is just so good that in comparison, they don't sound as good as they really are. I think if you take away the title track, this would be a good, consistent album. But you've got such a classic song on there, along with average, decent songs, that it feels like there's a dominant song on there that pretty much rules the entire album, if that makes any sense. So I'm trying to be fair here. I don't think too many people nowadays that listen to this album are going to like it. I don't think it's going to really find much of an audience today. And I don't think most of the people that bought this album when it was new, based on the title track, liked it then. I have a feeling that it was probably traded in quite often. But song by song by song, it really isn't bad. It's just missing a certain something. And this, instead of being a great album, it's a good album with a great cut on it, if that makes any sense. I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, it's probably better to just listen to the title track on YouTube with its really cheesy video, because that is the highlight. Unfortunately, there aren't any real hidden gems on this. Like, I've listened to albums where there are only like one hit, but then there are songs on the album that are as good as that hit, maybe even better. One example I would give is Foo Fighters, their debut album. There were a couple hits on that album that were pretty good songs, but then there was a song called Floaty that never made it onto the radio, that hardly anybody has heard of, and I think that song is as good as the radio cuts that were on that album. Unfortunately, there are no hidden gems on this album. There are good songs that are supported by an excellent song. So it's still not a bad album. It's just not what I expected at first. It's not what a lot of people would expect at first, and the songs needed to try a little harder to make the rest of the songs as good as that stellar title cut. So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars. And I mean, if you want to hear early 90s Southern rock, then it's worth seeking out the entire album. But really, as long as you sometime in your life hear the title cut, the more straightforward heavy metal song on the album, you'll be complete. But anyway, 3 out of 5 stars for Fly Me Courageous. I'll catch you in my next video. Later.